Fox tonight, the pressure is on tonight for those living at a Northeast Portland RV park meant to help the homeless.
They have less than a month before the site is shut down by the city. Fox 12's Michaela Armstrong spoke to some living there who say the site was a safe haven.
This crisis isn't coming. It's already here, and it's growing every month. RV parks are full, rents are unreachable, cities are cracking down, and hundreds of thousands of Americans are being pushed out of society. Here's the truth they're not telling you. By 2026, America faces a hidden housing emergency. More than 900,000 people now live in RVs, vans, cars, and makeshift vehicles. This number has more than doubled since 2019, when vehicle homelessness was still rare. Today, it appears in almost every major metro area, especially in California, Texas, Florida, Arizona, Oregon, and Washington. Entire industrial zones, abandoned parking lots, and roadside areas have transformed into informal RV communities. What makes this crisis different is who it affects. Over 60% of vehicle dwellers held stable jobs within the last 2 years. They never planned this lifestyle. They were pushed into it after losing housing and exhausting their savings. RV parks no longer offer solutions. Waiting lists stretch from 6 months to 2 years, and most affordable spaces are already full. Overflow forces families to park on streets, under bridges, or in unsafe areas. Local surveys show that many people move locations every 2 to 3 weeks due to enforcement actions. This is not a fringe movement. It represents mass displacement caused by economic pressure. Vehicle living has become the last shelter option for hundreds of thousands who have nowhere else to go. The scale of this crisis reveals fundamental failures in America's housing system. When nearly 1 million people must live in vehicles to survive, we are witnessing the collapse of affordable housing on a national level. These are not statistics. They are working families, seniors, and children forced into survival mode because traditional housing has become mathematically impossible to afford. Between 2024 and 2026, more than 15 million Americans experienced layoffs, reduced hours, or contract terminations. Industries once considered stable, including technology, transportation, retail, logistics, and healthcare, saw major workforce cuts. When income disappears, housing becomes the first casualty. The average displaced worker loses between $28,000 and $42,000 per year. Most American households have less than $5,000 in savings, which means job loss quickly becomes a housing crisis. Research shows that emergency funds are usually exhausted within 4 to 7 months after income disruption. Once savings run out, families begin selling possessions, draining retirement accounts, and maxing out credit cards. When debt reaches its limit, eviction follows. By the time people move into RVs, many have already tried couch surfing, staying in motels, or moving in with relatives. Gig workers and independent contractors face especially high vulnerability. They often lack unemployment benefits and health coverage. A single canceled contract can eliminate their entire income stream. Surveys indicate that over 40% of RV homeless adults were fully employed just 24 months earlier. This reveals that RV homelessness is not caused by laziness or bad choices. It results from economic instability that gives people no margin for error. The safety net has vanished for millions of working Americans. Job loss used to mean temporary hardship. Today, it often means permanent displacement. Without strong unemployment protections, emergency savings programs, or affordable housing options, a single layoff can trigger a cascading crisis that ends with families living in parking lots. The connection between employment instability and homelessness has never been clearer or more devastating. Since 2020, average rents across the United States have increased by 38 to 45%. In high-demand cities, increases of 50 to 70% are now common. A basic one-bedroom apartment that once cost $900 now costs $1,600 or more. By 2026, the average monthly rent for a modest apartment ranges between $1,500 and $2,100. Landlords typically require tenants to earn 3 times the rent, meaning a worker must make $60,000 to $85,000 per year to qualify. Meanwhile, median wages remain between $43,000 and $48,000. This creates a mathematical gap. Millions of people simply do not earn enough to qualify for legal housing, even when working full-time. Over 11 million renters are now considered severely cost-burdened, spending more than half their income on housing. When rent consumes most income, there is no room for emergencies. A car repair, medical bill, or missed paycheck can trigger eviction. Once someone loses housing, re-entry becomes extremely difficult due to security deposits, application fees, and credit checks. RV living becomes the only affordable shelter option when traditional housing becomes financially unreachable. The numbers do not lie. Working full-time no longer guarantees housing in America. This rent crisis affects entire generations. Young adults cannot move out of parents' homes. Middle-aged workers lose decades of stability. Seniors on fixed incomes face impossible choices. The gap between wages and housing costs continues widening every month, pushing more people toward vehicles as their only remaining option. Market forces have created a situation where homelessness is the logical outcome for millions of working Americans. Across the United States, more than 600 cities now enforce laws that restrict sleeping in vehicles, parking overnight, or occupying public spaces. These policies are often presented as cleanup efforts, but they directly target people who have nowhere else to go. Common rules ban cooking outdoors, using portable toilets, or staying in one place for more than a few hours. Violations result in fines ranging from $100 to $1,000. When people cannot pay, penalties accumulate into crushing debt. Vehicles are frequently towed and impounded. The average cost to recover an RV or van ranges from $2,500 to $6,000, including towing, storage, and administrative fees. For most homeless families, this is impossible to pay. Once the vehicle is lost, they lose both shelter and transportation simultaneously. Police sweeps now occur every 2 to 6 weeks in many metro areas. During these operations, residents are forced to move with little notice. Belongings are discarded, medications are lost, and personal documents disappear. Court rulings in several states have authorized large-scale removals of RV communities. Instead of providing housing, governments are spending millions on enforcement. This approach treats poverty as a crime rather than a social emergency. The cycle is brutal and predictable. People receive citations they cannot afford. Fines accumulate into warrants. Vehicles get impounded. Families lose everything. Then they reappear in different locations, starting the cycle again. Cities claim they are solving problems, but they are only moving homeless populations around while making their situations more desperate. Enforcement without housing alternatives accomplishes nothing except increasing human suffering and wasting public resources on a strategy that cannot succeed. RV parks were once considered a low-cost alternative to apartment living. By 2026, that reality has disappeared. Monthly lot rent now averages between $700 and $1,200, depending on location. Utilities add another $150 to $300 per month. This means basic RV parking often costs over $1,000 monthly, rivaling small apartments in some regions. For people earning minimum wage or living on fixed income, this is unaffordable. Many parks also enforce 10 to 15-year rules, banning older RVs. Since most homeless residents own older vehicles, they are automatically excluded. Background checks, credit screenings, and income requirements are becoming standard practice. Large investment firms have purchased hundreds of RV parks nationwide. These corporations convert long-term parks into luxury resort-style destinations, raising prices and removing permanent residents. Profit motives have eliminated affordability. Vacancy rates in affordable parks have dropped below 5% in many states. Waiting lists are common, and some parks no longer accept long-term tenants at all. As a result, the traditional refuge for struggling families has disappeared, forcing them onto streets and informal camps. The one place where homeless families could legally park and access basic utilities has been transformed into premium vacation destinations. The irony is stark. RVs were supposed to represent freedom and mobility. Now they represent homelessness and desperation. The parks that once welcomed working families now cater exclusively to wealthy retirees on vacation. This transformation has eliminated one of the last affordable housing options in America, leaving hundreds of thousands with no legal place to exist. The market has spoken, and poor families are not invited. By 2026, older Americans represent one of the fastest growing segments of the RV homeless population. People aged 55 and over now account for nearly 35 to 40% of those living in vehicles. Many spent decades working, paying taxes, and contributing to the economy, yet still cannot afford housing and retirement. The average Social Security benefit in 2026 is approximately $1,900 per month. After Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, and prescriptions, many seniors are left with less than $1,400 to cover rent, food, and utilities. In most cities, this amount does not cover even the cheapest apartment. Rising property taxes and insurance costs have also forced older homeowners to sell or lose their homes. Reverse mortgages and depleted retirement accounts leave many with no financial cushion. Medical expenses are the leading cause of savings depletion among retirees. Many seniors living in RVs suffer from chronic illnesses such as diabetes, heart disease, and arthritis. Limited mobility makes frequent relocation difficult, yet police sweeps force them to move repeatedly. Without family support, they face isolation and vulnerability. For many elderly Americans, RV living is not about travel or freedom. It is a last survival strategy when retirement income fails to meet basic housing costs. These are people who worked their entire lives believing they would have security in old age. They raised families, paid mortgages, and saved what they could. Now they spend their final years being chased from parking lot to parking lot, managing chronic illnesses without stable shelter, and wondering how the system they supported for decades has completely abandoned them when they need it most. One of the most disturbing trends in the RV homelessness crisis is the growing number of families and children living in vehicles. By 2026, more than 200,000 children are estimated to be sleeping in RVs, vans, and cars across the country. Many of these families work full-time, but still cannot secure stable housing. Parents often hide their living situation to avoid intervention from child welfare agencies. Children are instructed not to tell teachers or classmates where they sleep. Homework is completed in parked cars, campground bathrooms, or public libraries. Lack of a permanent address disrupts school enrollment and transportation. Students frequently change schools multiple times per year, leading to academic delays and emotional stress. Studies show that homeless children are twice as likely to experience anxiety and depression. Access to nutritious food, regular sleep, and safe recreation is limited. Overcrowding in small vehicles creates tension and health risks. Parents often sleep in shifts to ensure safety during the night. Despite these challenges, many families remain invisible in official statistics because they avoid shelters. This hidden population shows how deeply the housing crisis is affecting working households. Childhood poverty has always existed in America, but this represents something different. These children are not in temporary crisis. They are growing up in vehicles, missing developmental milestones, and learning that instability is normal. Their education suffers. Their health deteriorates. Their sense of security never forms. An entire generation of children is experiencing homelessness not as an emergency, but as their everyday reality. The long-term consequences of this trauma will echo for decades. Living in a vehicle severely limits access to basic sanitation. By 2026, thousands of RV homeless residents rely on public restrooms, gas stations, or improvised systems for hygiene. Many cities have removed public toilets, leaving people with no legal place to dispose of waste. Limited access to clean water increases the risk of dehydration and infection. Respiratory illnesses are common due to mold, exhaust exposure, and poor ventilation. Carbon monoxide poisoning remains a serious threat from faulty heaters and generators. Emergency rooms report rising visits from vehicle dwellers for untreated infections, heat exhaustion, hypothermia, and chronic disease complications. Without regular medical care, minor issues become life-threatening emergencies. Showers are often available only through gym memberships or paid facilities, which many cannot afford. Laundry access is irregular, affecting personal hygiene and employability. Professional appearance becomes impossible to maintain. Waste disposal is another major challenge. Dump stations are scarce and often expensive. When access is blocked, illegal dumping increases, creating environmental hazards and public backlash against homeless communities. These conditions show that RV homelessness is evolving into a public health emergency that affects both residents and surrounding communities. Disease spreads, parasites multiply, infections go untreated. The United States is the wealthiest nation in human history, yet we have created conditions where hundreds of thousands of people cannot access toilets, showers, or clean water. These are not third world problems. They are the direct result of policy choices that prioritize enforcement over human dignity. When basic sanitation becomes a luxury, we have failed at the most fundamental level of civilization. Public health depends on infrastructure that serves everyone, not just those who can afford housing. Extreme weather has become one of the deadliest threats to RV homeless populations. By 2026, more than 1,500 deaths per year are linked to exposure-related causes, including hypothermia and heat stroke. In northern states, winter storms regularly cut power and fuel access. RVs lack proper insulation, making interior temperatures drop rapidly. Propane shortages and generator failures leave residents without heat for days at a time. In southern and western regions, summer heat is even more dangerous. Temperatures inside parked vehicles often exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Without air conditioning, dehydration and organ failure can occur within hours. Many cities open emergency shelters during extreme weather, but capacity is limited. Pets, belongings, and vehicle restrictions prevent many from using these facilities. As a result, people remain in unsafe environments rather than abandon what little they have. Climate instability has increased the frequency of heat waves, floods, and storms. Each event places RV residents at immediate risk. These deaths rarely make headlines, yet they occur quietly every season across the country. The victims are grandparents, veterans, disabled workers, and children. They die alone in parking lots and under overpasses. Their bodies are discovered days later. Coroners file reports. Then the cycle continues. These are preventable deaths. Every person who freezes or overheats in a vehicle died because America chose not to provide housing. We have the resources. We lack the political will. Each winter brings more frozen bodies. Each summer brings more heat casualties. The death toll climbs while governments debate whether homeless people deserve help. This is not a natural disaster. It is policy-driven mass casualty event happening in slow motion. Medical expenses remain one of the leading causes of homelessness in America. By 2026, the average household medical debt ranges from $10,000 to $25,000, even among insured families. High deductibles, denied claims, and uncovered treatments force families to rely on credit cards and loans. A single hospitalization can eliminate years of savings. Many people enter RV living after battling cancer, accidents, or chronic illness that destroyed their financial stability. Insurance gaps leave millions underinsured. Prescription costs, therapy, and specialist visits often require out-of-pocket payment. When housing and healthcare compete for limited funds, housing usually loses. Vehicle dwellers frequently delay treatment due to cost. Preventive care is skipped, leading to worsened conditions. Disability benefits can take 18 to 36 months to process, leaving people without income during recovery periods. Working while sick becomes common. Injuries go untreated. Mental and physical health deteriorates progressively. Medical debt turns health problems into housing crises, showing how intertwined America's healthcare and homelessness systems have become. Getting sick means losing everything. The cruelty is extraordinary. People become homeless not because they refuse to work, but because they got sick. They followed the rules. They had insurance. They sought treatment. Then the bills arrived. Collections agencies called. Credit scores dropped. Evictions followed. Now they live in RVs, still sick, but also homeless. The richest country on earth has created a system where illness equals financial destruction. We are the only developed nation where cancer treatment can lead directly to living in a vehicle. This is not healthcare. It is economic violence against the vulnerable. By 2026, mental health has become one of the most severe consequences of RV homelessness. Studies and outreach reports show that more than 60% of people living in vehicles experience chronic anxiety, depression, or trauma-related symptoms. Constant instability, lack of privacy, and fear of displacement create long-term psychological stress. Police sweeps interrupt sleep and daily routines, leading to widespread insomnia and exhaustion. Many residents report sleeping only 4 to 5 hours per night due to noise, safety concerns, and relocation threats. Sleep deprivation worsens mood disorders and weakens immune systems. Post-traumatic stress disorder is increasingly common, especially among people who have experienced repeated evictions, vehicle seizures, or violence. Without stable access to counseling, symptoms go untreated. Public mental health clinics often have waiting lists exceeding 6 months. Substance use rises as individuals attempt to cope with stress and isolation. Overdose rates are higher among unsheltered populations. Suicide attempts within homeless communities have increased steadily, particularly among middle-aged men and isolated seniors. Social isolation compounds these issues. Without community ties, people lose motivation and hope. The psychological toll of constant survival mode makes recovery increasingly difficult. Human beings are not designed to live in permanent crisis. Our brains require safety, stability, and rest. RV homelessness provides none of these. Instead, it delivers relentless stress that breaks people mentally over time. Depression becomes rational when circumstances are genuinely hopeless. Anxiety becomes appropriate when threats are constant. The mental health crisis among vehicle dwellers is not a separate problem. It is the predictable psychological response to inhumane living conditions that would break anyone subjected to them long enough. Women living in RVs and vehicles face significantly higher risks than their male counterparts. By 2026, outreach organizations report that nearly 1 in 3 homeless women has experienced physical or sexual violence while unhoused. Many avoid traditional shelters due to overcrowding, harassment, and lack of privacy. As a result, they remain in isolated areas where security is limited. Some sleep in rotating shifts to reduce vulnerability to assault. Access to feminine hygiene products and reproductive health care is inconsistent. Limited sanitation increases the risk of infections and complications. Pregnant women living in vehicles face elevated rates of premature birth and low birth weight. Single mothers are especially vulnerable. They must balance employment, childcare, and safety without stable shelter. Fear of losing custody prevents many from seeking help from authorities. Human trafficking and exploitation risks also increase among homeless women. Economic desperation makes some vulnerable to coercion and manipulation. Despite these dangers, specialized housing for women remains limited. Many programs operate at capacity, leaving thousands without protection. This reality shows how homelessness intensifies gender inequality and personal risk. Women describe living in constant fear. They park in different locations each night. They avoid sleeping deeply. They carry weapons. They hide their gender when possible. Some cut their hair short and wear men's clothing for safety. Others form protective groups, watching over each other's vehicles throughout the night. The violence they experience rarely gets reported because they have no faith in systems that have already failed them. Being female and homeless in America means navigating layers of danger that male vehicle dwellers never face. Gender turns homelessness into a fight for survival against predators who target the most vulnerable. Maintaining employment while living in an RV or vehicle is extremely difficult. By 2026, surveys indicate that more than 45% of vehicle dwellers struggle to keep steady work due to housing-related barriers. Many employers require a permanent address for hiring and payroll. Without one, applications are rejected automatically. Background checks often flag parking violations and fines, reducing job prospects significantly. Limited access to showers and laundry affects professional appearance. Public facilities are unreliable, and private services are expensive. Storage space for uniforms, tools, and documents is minimal in cramped vehicles. Internet access is inconsistent, making remote work and job searches difficult. Phone service is frequently interrupted due to unpaid bills. Transportation problems arise when vehicles break down or are impounded during sweeps. Work schedules are disrupted by police sweeps and relocation orders. Employees arrive late or exhausted after sleepless nights. Over time, employers perceive unreliability, even when workers are making extreme efforts. These barriers trap people in low-wage, temporary jobs with no benefits. Without stable income, escaping homelessness becomes nearly impossible. The cycle is vicious and self-reinforcing. Homelessness creates unemployment. Unemployment perpetuates homelessness. You need an address to get a job. You need a job to get housing. You need housing to maintain employment. The system has created impossible requirements that guarantee failure. People are blamed for not working when the real problem is that the infrastructure required for employment has been denied to them. They are willing. They are capable. They are trying. But you cannot show up clean and rested when you have nowhere to shower or sleep. The employment crisis among RV homeless populations is not about motivation. It is about systematic exclusion. America's emergency shelter and nonprofit systems are under unprecedented strain. By 2026, many shelters operate at 120 to 150% capacity, forcing staff to turn people away nightly. Waiting lists for transitional housing often exceed 6 months to 1 year. Emergency vouchers expire before units become available. Some regions have fewer than 1 shelter bed for every 3 homeless individuals. Many shelters prohibit vehicles, pets, or large belongings, making them unsuitable for RV residents. Strict curfews conflict with work schedules. These rules discourage participation even when beds are available. Funding has not kept pace with rising demand. Federal and state grants lag behind inflation. Smaller nonprofits struggle with staff shortages and burnout among dedicated workers. Faith-based programs and community kitchens are stretched thin. Volunteers report emotional exhaustion and resource depletion. Donations fluctuate with economic conditions, making planning impossible. As demand grows faster than supply, the safety net weakens. Without systemic investment, temporary aid cannot match the scale of the crisis. Charities were designed to supplement government services, not replace them entirely. They cannot build housing. They cannot provide health care. They cannot employ millions. Yet we have shifted responsibility for a massive structural crisis onto volunteer organizations running donation drives. Food banks run out. Shelters overflow. Volunteers burn out. Meanwhile, politicians praise charity as the solution while cutting the public programs that might actually work. Kindness cannot substitute for policy. Compassion cannot replace infrastructure. The charity model has collapsed under weight it was never meant to carry, leaving both helpers and homeless populations in crisis together. By 2026, homelessness is increasingly becoming a long-term condition rather than a temporary setback. The average duration of homelessness now ranges between 3 and 5 years, compared to less than 2 years a decade earlier. Housing voucher programs exist, but lack available units. In many cities, fewer than 30% of vouchers are successfully used due to shortages. Landlords refuse participation in assistance programs. Criminal records from parking fines, trespassing charges, and unpaid citations damage credit scores and rental histories. These barriers remain even after income improves significantly. Employment gaps widen over time. Skills become outdated. Physical and mental health decline progressively. Social networks shrink as relationships fade. Re-entering housing requires thousands of dollars in deposits, fees, and moving costs. For most RV residents, this amount is unreachable without extraordinary intervention. As months turn into years, many lose confidence in recovery. Homelessness becomes normalized, making reintegration harder with each passing year. What starts as a temporary crisis calcifies into permanent status. The longer someone remains homeless, the harder escape becomes. Records accumulate. Trauma deepens. Hope fades. Society systems are designed to provide emergency help, not long-term support. After a few months, people disappear from services and statistics. They become the chronic homeless, the long-term RV dwellers, the permanent underclass living in vehicles while the housed population learns to look past them. Temporary homelessness has an exit. Permanent homelessness is a life sentence. We are creating a generation of Americans who will die in vehicles, not because they are beyond help, but because we stopped trying to help them. Despite the scale of the crisis, the United States lacks a coordinated national plan to address RV homelessness. Federal housing policy remains fragmented, with responsibility spread across multiple agencies that do not communicate effectively. Affordable housing construction lags far behind demand. By 2026, the country faces a shortage of more than 7 million low-income housing units. New developments take years to complete and often exceed affordable price ranges. Zoning laws restrict multifamily housing and backyard RV living in many areas. Even homeowners willing to help face legal barriers that prevent them from providing space. Public funding prioritizes enforcement over prevention. Cities spend millions on policing, towing, and court actions instead of permanent housing solutions. Political gridlock delays reform. Housing policy becomes entangled in ideological conflict. Meanwhile, conditions worsen daily for nearly 1 million Americans. Without coordinated leadership, communities are left to manage an expanding crisis alone. The absence of a national strategy guarantees continued displacement and suffering. Every other developed nation has figured out how to house its citizens. We have chosen not to try. We have the wealth. We have the land. We have the construction capacity. What we lack is political consensus that housing is a human right worth defending. Instead, we have 50 different state approaches, thousands of conflicting local ordinances, and no federal coordination. The result is predictable chaos. People die in parking lots while government agencies debate jurisdiction. RVs multiply while committees study the problem. The crisis grows while politicians argue about whose responsibility it is to solve. Without national leadership, this catastrophe will continue expanding until it consumes even more American families.
It is an eye-opening snapshot of the housing crisis in the South Bay. A new report found that homelessness is rising, but not necessarily in the cities that you might expect.
This isn't about camping rules. This is about survival becoming illegal. In 2026, cities, states, and insurers will change RV laws so fast that people are waking up non-compliant without moving an inch. What was legal yesterday can now get your RV ticketed, towed, or seized. These changes don't fix homelessness. They erase it by force. Across America, overnight RV parking bans quietly expanded in 2025 to 2026 through municipal code updates that received no federal headlines. Over 140 cities now explicitly prohibit sleeping in vehicles, including RVs, vans, and motorhomes. These laws are enforced through signage changes, parking ordinance updates, and public safety codes that impose fines typically ranging from $75 to $500 per night. The real damage comes from escalation. After 2 or 3 citations, vehicles can be towed at costs averaging $1,200 to $2,500, plus daily storage fees between $75 and $150. States like California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Colorado, and Florida expanded local authority to restrict vehicle habitation near residential zones, schools, and commercial corridors. Many cities reduced allowable parking time from 72 hours down to 24 or even 8 hours, making legal compliance nearly impossible for working RV dwellers. According to HUD estimates, more than 420,000 people now live in vehicles, with RVs making up a growing share. These bans provide no alternatives, only displacement. For seniors and laid-off workers, RVs often represent the last affordable shelter option. Median rent surpassed $1,900 per month in 2025, while campground monthly rates jumped 28 to 40% in 3 years. When free parking disappears, RV living becomes financially unsustainable overnight. These laws don't eliminate homelessness. They criminalize it, pushing people from legal survival into constant fines, police contact, and forced vehicle loss. For decades, highway rest areas served as emergency sleep zones for tired drivers and RV travelers. That safety net is disappearing. As of 2026, over 20 states now either ban overnight RV stays outright or allow enforcement at the discretion of state police. States including Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio, and Virginia tightened rest area rules under traffic safety and anti-camping provisions that sound reasonable but eliminate survival options. Most states now cap parking at 2 to 8 hours, regardless of driver fatigue. Violations result in citations between $100 and $300, and repeat enforcement may involve vehicle removal. The irony is fatal. The Federal Highway Administration has long warned that drowsy driving causes over 100,000 crashes annually, yet RV travelers are now penalized for resting. Truck stops are not a guaranteed alternative. Private truck stop chains increasingly restrict RV overnight stays or require fuel purchases that strain tight budgets. Paid RV parks now average $45 to $80 per night, pricing out working families and retirees. According to 8AA, fuel prices and campground costs combined rose over 34% since 2021, while wages did not keep pace with inflation. For full-time RV dwellers commuting to jobs, rest area bans remove the only legal free place to sleep between shifts. This change disproportionately affects nurses, construction workers, oil field employees, and seniors on fixed incomes. When legal rest becomes illegal, accidents rise, citations pile up, and RV living shifts from difficult to dangerous. Towing laws changed dramatically in 2025 to 2026, especially in urban areas where enforcement expanded beyond traditional parking violations. Cities expanded administrative tow authority, allowing RVs to be seized without criminal charges, just unpaid tickets or parking violations. Once towed, reclaiming an RV is often impossible. Average recovery costs exceed $3,000, including tow fees, impound charges, administrative fees, and accumulated fines that multiply daily. In cities like Los Angeles, Portland, San Diego, Phoenix, and Denver, unclaimed RVs can be auctioned or destroyed after 15 to 30 days. Many owners never recover personal belongings, family photographs, or essential documents. According to local audits, over 60% of towed RVs are never reclaimed, effectively erasing someone's home in a single enforcement action. New rules also reduced grace periods that once provided warning. Some jurisdictions now allow towing after one citation, compared to 3 previously. Vehicle as housing protections weakened following court rulings allowing cities to enforce bans even when shelter beds are unavailable. That legal shift changed everything. For people living paycheck to paycheck, towing is not a fine. It's total displacement. Replacing an RV costs $15,000 to $40,000, far beyond what most families can afford. Insurance rarely covers impound loss. Once the RV is gone, many fall directly into street homelessness with no path back. These laws don't solve housing shortages. They quietly eliminate visible poverty by eliminating the vehicle. RV parks are not a universal solution, and they're becoming unreachable for ordinary families. Since 2022, the number of RV parks accepting long-term stays dropped sharply, while nightly rates surged beyond what working people can afford. Industry data shows average nightly rates rose 38% nationwide, with popular states exceeding $90 per night. Monthly rates now average $900 to $1,400, excluding electricity costs that add hundreds more. Simultaneously, enforcement of the informal 10-year rule expanded across thousands of campgrounds. While not a law, it functions like one. Parks refuse entry to RVs older than 10 to 15 years, regardless of condition or maintenance. According to RVIA data, nearly 60% of RVs on the road are older than 10 years, instantly disqualified from most private campgrounds. Zoning changes also reduced park availability in areas where people need them most. Cities increasingly rezone RV parks into commercial or mixed-use developments that eliminate affordable spaces. Between 2019 and 2025, over 400 RV parks closed or converted, removing tens of thousands of spaces. No replacement infrastructure followed. For people forced into RV living by layoffs or rent hikes, campgrounds are no longer a fallback option. Wait lists stretch months. Prices exceed apartment rents in many regions. Without access to parks, RV dwellers are pushed back into cities where parking bans and towing enforcement await. This squeeze is structural, not accidental. Owning an RV is becoming more expensive due to regulatory changes implemented at the state level without federal oversight. Registration fees increased in many states, especially for heavier rigs that carry higher annual costs. California, Colorado, Washington, and Oregon implemented weight-based or emissions-linked registration hikes that target larger motorhomes. Annual registration for large motorhomes now exceeds $1,000 in some jurisdictions, compared to $300 to $500 just 3 years ago. Smog and emissions compliance is expanding into territory once exempt. While RVs were previously excluded from passenger vehicle emissions testing, states are exploring inspections tied to diesel regulations and environmental programs. Even rumors of future compliance requirements are impacting resale values. Used RV prices dropped 15 to 25% in some markets, trapping owners in depreciating assets they can't sell without substantial loss. Insurance premiums also surged dramatically. RV insurance increased 18 to 30% since 2023, driven by higher repair costs, increased theft rates, and liability risks. Some insurers now refuse coverage for full-time RV dwellers or require costly riders that add hundreds monthly. Without insurance, registration becomes impossible, creating a legal dead end. For families already stretched by layoffs and inflation, these costs stack fast. Registration, insurance, repairs, and fuel now rival traditional housing costs. What was once an affordable escape from unaffordable rent has become a regulated, expensive trap. And for many, falling out of compliance means losing everything. Emission laws aimed at commercial trucks are now spilling into the RV world with devastating consequences for owners. States following California's CARB standards, now over 17 states, are tightening diesel rules that affect motorhomes built on heavy-duty chassis. While RVs were once exempt from most regulations, enforcement gaps are closing rapidly. New registration hurdles, inspection requirements, and resale restrictions are emerging across multiple states simultaneously. The Advanced Clean Trucks regulation doesn't ban RVs directly, but it restricts manufacturers from selling gas and diesel chassis in certain states unless they meet zero-emission quotas. The result is fewer new motorhomes available, higher prices, and long wait lists that stretch months. Some dealers report 40 to 60% drops in available Class A and Super C inventory in CARB-compliant states. For used RV owners, resale is becoming a nightmare. Buyers in CARB states are increasingly unable or unwilling to register older diesel rigs due to compliance uncertainty. That drives down resale values nationwide, not just in affected states. Owners are stuck with assets they can't sell or upgrade without accepting massive losses. Compliance costs also rise steeply. Diesel repairs tied to emission systems now average $4,000 to $12,000 per failure, often totaling older RVs. For vehicles built before 2010, one check engine light can mean the end. These laws weren't written with RV dwellers in mind, but they hit them hardest. When your home is also your vehicle, emission policy becomes housing policy. Local noise and air quality ordinances expanded aggressively in 2025 to 2026, targeting one of the last survival tools for off-grid RV living. Cities and counties are banning or restricting gas and diesel generators that provide power for refrigeration, heating, and medical equipment. Many areas now enforce generator bans during nighttime hours or entirely within city limits, with fines ranging from $150 to $1,000 per violation. National parks, BLM land near urban zones, and coastal counties are tightening rules under environmental protection programs. California, Arizona, Nevada, and parts of Florida already restrict generator use based on decibel levels as low as 60 decibels, which many standard RV generators exceed. Even quiet inverter generators are not exempt in some jurisdictions. Solar power is not a universal solution despite what advocates claim. A full solar setup capable of replacing generator power costs $5,000 to $12,000, far beyond the reach of many seniors and laid-off workers living on savings or unemployment benefits. Installation requires technical knowledge most don't have. Without generators, RV dwellers lose refrigeration for food and insulin, heating during winter, and power for medical equipment like CPAP machines. For people living in RVs out of necessity, generator bans aren't about comfort or noise complaints. They're about survival. No power means no insulin refrigeration, no life-sustaining medical devices, no heating when temperatures drop below freezing. These laws assume RV living is recreational. For hundreds of thousands of Americans, it's not. It's the last line between shelter and the street. Traffic laws are increasingly written with passenger cars in mind and enforced against RVs that can't physically meet the same standards. Left lane laws expanded in states like Connecticut, Georgia, and Texas, with fines reaching $200 to $500 for slow-moving vehicles occupying passing lanes. RVs climbing grades or towing trailers are frequent targets despite having no practical alternative. Speed variance enforcement also increased across multiple states. RVs traveling too slowly relative to traffic flow, even within posted speed limits, can be cited for impeding traffic. That's a legal gray area now actively enforced by state police looking to meet citation quotas. Weight-based restrictions compound the problem significantly. Some bridges and secondary highways now prohibit vehicles over certain GVWR limits, forcing detours that add hours and fuel costs. Violations can trigger fines exceeding $1,000 plus mandatory detours. GPS systems often fail to warn RV drivers about restrictions, making accidental violations common and costly. Insurance companies track citations carefully. Multiple traffic tickets can spike RV insurance premiums by 30 to 50% or result in policy cancellation. Without insurance, registration fails. Without registration, the RV becomes illegal to occupy anywhere. A few traffic stops can start a chain reaction that ends in vehicle loss within months. These laws don't account for the physics of large vehicles. RVs cannot accelerate, brake, or maneuver like passenger cars. Yet enforcement treats them identically, turning everyday driving into a legal minefield where compliance is physically impossible. Court rulings in 2024 to 2025 reshaped how cities enforce anti-camping laws against people living in vehicles. Courts increasingly allow enforcement even when shelter beds are unavailable, removing the last legal protection for RV dwellers. That's a massive shift from previous precedent. Previously, lack of available shelter limited enforcement authority. Now, cities can ticket, tow, and arrest regardless of shelter capacity. This legal change gave cities a green light to enforce dormant laws. Vehicle habitation bans that sat unused for years are now actively enforced with aggressive ticketing campaigns. The result is rapid displacement across urban areas. Legal scholars estimate over 300 municipalities expanded enforcement powers following these court decisions. For RV dwellers, this means legality can vanish overnight without warning. A place that was tolerated yesterday becomes illegal today, with no notice period or alternative provided. Appeals are costly and slow, often taking months. Legal aid organizations are overwhelmed with cases and can't help everyone. Most people simply lose their vehicle before any appeal is heard. This isn't about illegal behavior or public safety concerns. It's about status. Living in a vehicle is increasingly treated as a violation in itself, regardless of conduct. When courts redefine survival as illegal conduct, the fallout is immediate and brutal. RVs are no longer a workaround for unaffordable housing. They're a target for enforcement sweeps designed to remove visible poverty from public view. RV insurance is undergoing a silent crackdown that's eliminating coverage options for full-time dwellers. Insurers are pulling back from full-time RV coverage, especially for older rigs and urban dwellers who represent higher risk. Premiums jumped 20 to 30% in 2 years alone. Some policies now exclude theft, towing, or habitation-related claims entirely, leaving owners exposed. Worse still, insurers share risk data across industry databases. Multiple claims, citations, or even certain ZIP codes can result in blacklisting that follows owners between companies. Once dropped by one insurer, finding replacement coverage becomes extremely difficult and expensive. Without insurance, registration lapses automatically. Without registration, the RV becomes illegal to occupy or move anywhere. Some states now require proof of continuous insurance without any gaps. A lapse, even accidental due to missed payment, can trigger fines or license suspension that compounds the problem. For people juggling bills after layoffs, one missed payment can unravel everything within weeks. Insurance used to protect RV owners from financial disaster. Now it decides who gets to stay legal and who doesn't. Legality is the thin line keeping thousands of families housed rather than on the street. When insurance companies determine that line based on profit rather than need, the housing crisis accelerates. People who bought RVs specifically to escape homelessness now face losing them because insurance became unaffordable or unavailable. The system designed to provide security has become another barrier to survival. Across the United States, age-based RV restrictions have expanded so widely that they now function like formal regulation even without legislation. While not written into state law, thousands of private and semi-private campgrounds enforce a 10 to 15-year maximum age rule for RVs. This matters enormously because industry registration data shows nearly 60% of RVs currently in use are older than 10 years. These are not neglected rigs. They are the only affordable housing option for many families. New RV prices now average $120,000 to $180,000, completely out of reach for working families. Used, Older RVs typically sell for $15,000 to $35,000, making them the only entry point. When parks deny access based solely on age, owners have nowhere legal to stay. Cities then cite those same RVs for street parking violations, creating a loop where older rigs are legal to own but illegal to place anywhere. Seniors are hit hardest by these restrictions. The average Social Security benefit in 2025 is $1,907 per month, while long-term campground fees often exceed $1,200 per month, not including electricity charges. Age rules quietly remove the last affordable shelter option without passing a single housing law or public vote. What makes this devastating is enforcement consistency. Once a park rejects an RV, there is rarely another option nearby within driving distance. Owners are pushed into cities, triggering citations, towing, and eventual vehicle loss. Age rules don't clean up communities. They quietly erase housing. RV ownership used to mean freedom of movement across America. In 2026, crossing a state line can instantly put you out of compliance with conflicting regulations. Registration rules, emission standards, insurance minimums, and inspection requirements now vary so drastically that an RV legal in one state may be illegal in another, without expensive modifications. States enforcing stricter emissions or residency rules increasingly flag out of state-registered RVs that remain locally for extended periods. After 30 to 90 days, some states require re-registration at full resident rates. That process can cost $1,500 to $3,000, not including repairs or upgrades needed to pass local inspection standards. Diesel RVs are especially affected by state-to-state inconsistency. A rig registered in Arizona or Nevada may face compliance barriers in California, Oregon, or Washington due to emissions rules. Owners must either move constantly to avoid residency triggers, risk expensive citations, or attempt costly re-registration they can't afford. Many can't afford any option and simply get stuck. This destroys one of the last advantages of RV living: mobility for work opportunities. People can no longer relocate for employment, family emergencies, or personal safety without risking fines or losing their vehicle entirely. For laid-off workers using RVs as transitional housing, mobility was survival. Now it's a legal trap. State-to-state inconsistency turns highways into invisible borders where legality ends without warning signs. The American road has become a patchwork of conflicting rules that make legal RV living nearly impossible. Zoning changes in 2025 to 2026 redefined RV living as a temporary use in many counties, eliminating long-term options. That shift sounds minor, but carries huge consequences for thousands of families. In dozens of states, staying in an RV on private land for more than 14 to 30 days is now illegal, even with the landowner's permission and proper sanitation. Counties justify these changes under land use planning and property value protection that sounds reasonable to homeowners. But enforcement tells the real story. Violations carry fines ranging from $500 to $1,000 per day, and landowners face penalties as well for allowing violations. As a result, many property owners refuse RV tenants entirely to avoid legal liability. This eliminates one of the last affordable options for people displaced by rent hikes and layoffs: rural or semi-rural private land stays. Between 2021 and 2025, average rent rose over 30%, while wages lagged far behind inflation. RV living filled the gap when apartments became unaffordable. Zoning laws are now closing it systematically. Once removed from rural areas by enforcement, RV dwellers are forced into cities where parking bans, towing enforcement, and vehicle habitation laws take over. This isn't accidental. It's displacement through paperwork, not bulldozers or visible action. Zoning didn't solve housing shortages or create new affordable options. It simply pushed RV residents into enforcement zones where they become someone else's problem until the vehicle is eventually towed and destroyed. Mandatory safety compliance is expanding through registration and insurance channels that enforce standards retroactively. Older RVs increasingly fail inspections due to electrical, brake, propane, or structural standards that didn't exist when they were built decades ago. Required repairs commonly cost $3,000 to $10,000. often exceeding the RV's current market value entirely. Fail inspection and registration is denied automatically. Without registration, the RV cannot legally be occupied or moved anywhere. Insurance companies use inspection failures to cancel coverage immediately, compounding the problem. Loss of insurance triggers registration suspension, creating a legal spiral. These rules assume owners can afford expensive upgrades on short notice. Many can't manage unexpected costs. According to consumer financial data, over 40% of RV owners living full-time report having less than $1,000 in emergency savings. When compliance costs exceed available income, the RV doesn't break down mechanically. It becomes illegal through paperwork. For people using RVs as housing after job loss, this is forced displacement disguised as safety regulation. No alternative shelter is provided by the jurisdictions enforcing these rules. No assistance programs exist to help with compliance costs. The RV simply disappears from legality, and families are left with nowhere to go. Safety matters for everyone. But when standards are applied without affordability considerations or assistance programs, the result isn't improved safety for RV dwellers. It's loss of housing for people who have no other options. Compliance becomes eviction through regulation. Many cities now enforce RV laws through forced movement rather than outright bans that would face legal challenges. RVs are ordered to move every 24 to 72 hours, often with no legal destination provided. This constant relocation causes mechanical wear, fuel expenses, and exhaustion that compounds over time. Fuel costs alone can exceed $300 to $500 per month for RVs forced to relocate repeatedly between zones. Breakdowns become more likely with constant use. Studies of vehicle-dwelling populations show repeated displacement increases the chance of total vehicle loss by over 50% within 1 year of enforcement. Once an RV breaks down mechanically, it becomes a stationary violation, leading to immediate towing. This isn't random enforcement. It's attrition by design. Make survival unstable long enough, and the problem removes itself without shelter alternatives. People lose jobs due to constant movement that prevents reliable work schedules. Medical appointments are missed repeatedly. Children are pulled from school. The RV doesn't fail suddenly through accident. It fails through cumulative pressure and wear. Forced relocation doesn't solve homelessness or create housing. It accelerates the path from RV living to street homelessness by destroying the last stable element, the vehicle itself. When the RV breaks down from forced movement, families lose their shelter, their transportation, their belongings, and any remaining financial stability. The enforcement strategy is designed not to help, but to make people disappear from city streets by making survival impossible until the vehicle fails completely. There is no single RV ban coming in 2026 that will make headlines. What's happening is worse than any single law. Thousands of small legal changes now stack together across jurisdictions. Parking bans, zoning rules, insurance restrictions, inspections, towing authority, and campground exclusions. Each alone seems manageable and reasonable. Together, they collapse RV living as a viable option entirely. Experts estimate 800,000 to 1 million people now rely on vehicles for shelter across America. Layoffs continue in manufacturing, retail, and service sectors. Rent remains unaffordable for working families in most cities, yet laws move in the opposite direction. RVs are harder to buy, insure, register, park, and keep legal with each passing month. What once served as a pressure valve for the housing crisis is being sealed shut through coordinated enforcement. RV living is no longer a workaround for unaffordable housing. It's a countdown to displacement. People who bought RVs to escape homelessness now face losing them to the same system that made housing unaffordable. 2026 isn't about one dramatic law ruining lives through obvious cruelty. It's about a system quietly deciding who gets to exist legally and who doesn't. It's about making survival illegal through 1,000 small cuts until people disappear from public view. The RVs won't be banned. They'll just become impossible to keep legal, forcing hundreds of thousands into street homelessness when their last shelter option is towed, sold, or abandoned after compliance becomes financially impossible. This isn't a housing crisis anymore. It's a legality crisis. If you live in an RV, know someone who does, or see this happening in your city, tell us in the comments what you're witnessing right now. And in the next video, we break down which states are enforcing these laws the hardest and where RV living is disappearing first.